On May 21st, 1937, Amelia took off for Miami from Oakland to begin the first part of her journey. She spent a week in Miami lounging around while mechanics worked on her plane. On June 1st, Amelia and her co-pilot Fred took the small amount of luggage they had and stepped into their plane to begin the journey. The first part was easy. She flew to San Juan, then Puerto Rico, and then from there they headed to Venezuela and then Dutch Guyana. On the way, she turned on automatic pilot, a new thing that had just been invented. Amelia Earhart and Fred were getting to know each other too. It was too loud to talk just to themselves, so they wrote notes instead. After Dutch Guyana, they flew to Brazil, where they stopped for 2 days so the plane could be reserviced before they tried the long flight to Africa. 2 days later, they climbed into the sky again and began the 1,900-mile trip to Africa. First, they landed in St. Louis, Senegal, and then from there they went to Al Fashir in Sudan. Along the way, they saw a herd of hippopotami that resented their presence. They stopped there for a few days, and then they headed to Assab, which is now Eritrea. They took on hundreds of gallons of gasoline before they headed to the next stop, which is Karachi in India, which is now Pakistan. From Karachi, they flew to Calcutta, but along the way, a huge flock of black eagles rose from their roosts and got in their way. They soared about lazily, oblivious to the plane, but they did manage to miss the plane, and Amelia said she never had such an experience and hoped to never have another. In Calcutta, they took off immediately for Akyab, now Sitwe, in what was then Burma. After a short stop in Akyab, they headed for Rangoon. Amelia thought they had outflown the monsoons, but not long into the flight, they ran into a huge wall of water. But only Fred's navigational skills were able to turn them around and head them back to safety at the airport. The next morning, they tried again for Rangoon. They made the trip soundlessly, and then they flew to Singapore, a flight over 1,200 miles. After Singapore, they went to Bandung, Java, in what was then the Netherlands East Indies. Monsoon weather, as well as necessary to repair to the fuel regulator, forced them to stay in Bandung for a few days. Amelia used that time to rest. Amelia and Fred took off on June 27th for Port Darwin, Australia. In Australia, they had to stop because a fuse had blown on the plane. Meanwhile, while they stopped, Amelia and Fred lightened the plane by sending home anything not completely necessary to the flight. On June 29th, they took off for New Guinea. In New Guinea, they stopped to be reserviced because it was going to be a long and tricky flight to Howland Island. On July 2nd, 1937, Amelia and Fred took off for Howland Island. On this part of the flight, she had to keep constant contact with the Coast Guard cutter Itasca. But she lost contact with him a few times during the night, and one time she lost it and never regained it. And Amelia Earhart was never seen again after that trip. They searched for 10 days to find Amelia Earhart, but after 10 days, the president called for all search to be terminated, and Amelia Earhart was officially, legally dead. But to this day, she will always be remembered.